It's a good afternoon. My name is Arabile Kumete. Welcome then to this level of On Point as we get into the market sense now, as we try to make sense of what has happened across the market picture today in this lunchtime trading picture. It is a much more positive day for the most part. The JSE All Shares up 0.2% today, so enjoying some positivity then. And that really just comes off the back of some vaccine news, of course, across the globe. Also getting those positive GDP figures perhaps helping somewhat, but a lot more on the vaccine news, particularly coming out of Britain. Of course, we saw the first inoculations happening out in the United Kingdom. A few more as well happening across the globe. We'll certainly see how things fare overall. We also got some news yesterday from Clicks. They're saying that they're in talks with government to perhaps try and provide a storage facility or a distribution facility using their cold containment refrigerators, which could help then distribute COVID-19 vaccines across the country. Of course, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, which is also being tested here in South Africa, can actually be kept in normal refrigerating levels and can then be distributed across the country. So as soon as medical authorities give the thumbs up on that one, the likes of Clicks, Shoprite and Pick n Pay, who have all said that they're willing to help government distribute the COVID-19 vaccine, would certainly then be helpful across the board. What that means for the economy? Well, perhaps we begin to get things back to normal somewhat a little sooner than later. But of course, that vaccine will not be a panacea for everything, and market participants have certainly been a little bit worried that we certainly are hinging all hopes on those vaccines. But the market generally going higher, even in Asia. The likes of the Hang Seng heading a little bit higher in this morning's trade. Europe has fared a little bit better as well on this afternoon trading picture. And as I said, so too on the local front, we've seen quite a few go a little bit higher. In terms of positive stocks, the likes of Steinhoff as well have enjoyed some positivity today. They've gone up, what is it now, around 14%, a big shift, around 16% in fact. So a big shift for them across the day today. The likes of CAP as well going up more than 7%. Afrimatch, Omnia enjoying a positive day. On the negative side, unfortunately, though, Telkom has taken a more than 4% hit, nearly 5% in fact, in this lunchtime trading picture. Goldfields 4.8% weaker. On the local currency, well, we're back to levels that we last saw in the middle of February. Could we actually say we're at pre-pandemic levels for the local currency? Perhaps. 14 Rand and 90 cents against the US dollar is where we currently sit on that front. So certainly better there. When it comes against the euro, we're at around 18 Rand and 5 cents. 20 Rand and 3 cents is the price of a US dollar. On the oil front, well, that has continued to go high, and at some point we thought it would reach $50 a barrel. It has unfortunately come off those highs and now sits at $48.91 a barrel. So let's talk about all of this now and everything else that has pretty much happened across the globe right now with regards to this market picture. Michael Traherne is from Vestat Asset Management, and he joins us this afternoon. Michael, it's a good afternoon to you. Positivity finally for the JSE All Share after a few days of negativity. Is it just the news on the vaccines? Is there a little bit more? I mean, we haven't gotten any word on Brexit yet.
Yes, Arabile, green on the screen, great to see. It seems the general trend is up, mostly because of vaccines. Part of it is also US officials finally looking like they're going to have some sort of stimulus package. And the reason that that's important is the US is the biggest economy in the world. And if that economy's got some stimulus package, that's good news for the global economy in general. So those two seem to be the main driving force. But I think you're getting to the point now where traders are saying, okay, 2020 wasn't great. 2021 looks much, much better. Yesterday we started seeing the first vaccines being administered, and the expectation is that most of the vulnerable people will have their vaccines by the middle of next year, and that hopefully means that any global lockdowns will be substantially reduced or cut completely, and companies go back to normal, and we see pre-lockdown profit levels.
Do you think markets are perhaps looking at that recovery from the GDP data, which was slightly better than expected, of course, as a good kickstart for South Africa? We're only down 7.9% for the year. So it does point to perhaps lower estimates when it comes to, or shall I say stronger estimates when it comes to South Africa's growth or negative growth picture for this year. Does it point to perhaps some better stances when it comes to how market participants will see South Africa?
So we would say a litmus test for the South African economy would be our banks and our insurers. And they were the only stocks really that were up yesterday in the JSE top 40. And that shows definitely that the stronger than expected GDP read had a very positive impact on local or SA Inc. companies. And also it's the reason that I think the Rand is sitting now at 1490 odd, 1489, somewhere around there. Because our GDP number looks a lot better. And the reason for that is one of South Africa's biggest issues we're facing at the moment is our debt to GDP ratio. And obviously the higher your GDP is, the stronger that ratio looks. So if we had missed on GDP estimates, you would have seen that debt to GDP ratio be a lot worse than expected. It means now that it's better than expected, but we're by no means out of the woods. There's still a lot to do. As you point out, we're still down 6% compared to GDP 2019 third quarter. So it's 2020, we have gone backwards. We have to now make up lost ground, and then we need to start getting growth, particularly for those who are unemployed. You can't find employment if there's no economic growth to create those jobs for you.
Yeah, if we continue on the economic front then, Michael, you still have today, then we saw the inflation number come out, 3.2% still is the figure on that front. You also have retail sales coming out. That fell down 1.8% year on year for the month of October. I suppose it's correlating data, right? We're not buying as much still, even if it is compared to a year ago, and inflation still remaining at the bottom end of the target range then as well. So I guess it kind of tells the picture that South Africa's still not out of the doldrums yet.
Yeah, for sure. So inflation went backwards. I think it was 3.3 previously, now 3.2. The Reserve Bank have pointed out that there's a lack of demand, and that's the reason that inflation's low. And our biggest risk to our overall inflation is actually our currency. So the Reserve Bank's been very, very cautious because they understand that if our debt to GDP ratio gets too high, our currency will weaken significantly and will import inflation. And that's why they haven't been more aggressive with interest rate cuts. But now that we're seeing a very strong looking currency, we're seeing some sort of GDP rebound, we're seeing inflation staying muted. Maybe early 2021, we might see more interest rate cuts to sort of stimulate the economy. And looking at the retail sales, it was down 1.8% for October, but if you go back to September, it was down 2.7 or 2.8%. So it's not as bad as it was. So some sort of momentum seems to be picking up, but the country desperately needs a few good quarters of strong GDP growth going forward.
Michael, what happens though for retailers? I mean, the likes of Mr. Price and even all those that have tried to have Black Friday sales and the like, of course, going on for more than just one day. Do things really look up for them? I mean, considering that we aren't spending as much because, of course, salaries perhaps getting cut by more than usual at a time like this, some not even having jobs anymore. Do retailers continue to be a firm prospect investment-wise?
I think you have to break it down into the different sectors that they operate in. We saw that the food retailers in particular did very well during lockdown. People had more money to spend, couldn't spend it on booze, so you go out and you buy a good steak. That trend, I don't know if that will continue, but food is something that hangs around. You're looking more at bespoke items. Those sort of retailers, I think, start to struggle. So as investors, you've got to pick what time frame you're looking at, and then what does it look like long term. The tailwind for retailers, though, is this move online. And if they can get that right, it helps them keep costs down. And even if sales don't increase, if they can keep their costs down, it means their profits can increase. So I think in general, though, as long as South Africa's GDP is stagnant, anything local based is going to struggle, because no growth at the economic level means no growth at a lower level either. So it's I think South Africa needs economic growth for all sectors, for investment purposes, for job purposes, for economic stability, for the sake of our currency. It's one of those things that will solve all our problems, and it's the hardest thing to achieve.
Yeah, certainly is the hardest thing to achieve at this point. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon here on Point, as we get a whiff of that market picture and get a sense of where we currently sit. Michael Traherne is from Vestact Asset Management. That does bring things to an end then here on Market Sense with myself. My colleagues will join you then right after this. Nompumelelo Sizia will join you as well for the rest of On Point. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Back with you again then tomorrow. Of course, still a whole lot happening this week. We do have mining and manufacturing data as well still to come out from Stats SA, so we'll see just exactly how production has gone for that sector in particular. That does bring things to an end then from me. That's where the buck stops.